Welcome back to another episode of Tractor Roy. My name is Trent. I got Brady behind the camera and Gentry's helping us today. So we're going to get this Owatonna swather running so that way we can get out this Hesston swather back behind. Haying has started. I got to load this stuff up, take it into town today so I can cut either today or tomorrow. This Hesston is the one I'm going to use this year, but this one was broken down at the end of the season. Had to put a new distributor and new carburetor on there. And by the time I got this one fixed, this one had already been parked. So rather than move it, I just pulled this in. Well, now that kind of screws me because I got to move this one out of the way before I can get this one. When I left this one, it was running just fine. After this the carburetor and the distributor. So the carburetor was just super worn out. I tried rebuilding it, but it just was too far gone, too old. This distributor, all the bushings and stuff were worn out in it. So it would never hold time like it needed to. And I could have gone through and rebuilt that, but it was points, and I've had issues with the points in the coil several times in this thing, and I'm kind of just over it. So I stuck in an HEI distributor. This has got a Ford inline 6. It's an industrial 3.3 liter, so I think it's a 200. But it, like the same engine they put in Mustangs, just that industrial means it has a governor on the side of it for applications like this. So parts are pretty easy to get. Other than that ignition, and now that I fixed it, it's super reliable. Not too bad. So we got to get that one started. This one, this Hesston, same thing. I mean, I had no issues with this one last year. I bought this last year and pretty much just took it right out into the field. Didn't have to work on anything. This one has a Chrysler Slant 6 in it. So it seems super goofy because it's set, instead of sitting vertically like this, it's off to the side. It's like they took a V12 and just cut it in half. Some of the wiring looks a little goofy on here, but it runs, so I don't really want to go through and mess with it yet. So I first, fill up these tires. This one's a little low. This one, I put a hole in this tire last year. Not this one, the tire that was over here last year, and got these new ones. Well, I think I used the tubes that came with this, and they're a little old, so they started leaking again. Got to air that up, but I stuck this post underneath there because the worst thing for these tires is to let them sit on like fully on the ground. They'll just crack the sidewalls, and they don't last very long doing that. So we kept this off the ground, so it should have saved the tire, and it doesn't look like we're going to have any issues. I do have extra tubes for this, and I do have a matching tire for that other side. I just haven't swapped it out. We got to do that. We got to throw a battery in this thing, and it should fire up. We might have to put a little bit of fresh gas in there, but I don't think we'll have too many issues with it. So this is one of the original tires from it, or this tire is the same as what was on the other side. And as you can see along the sidewall, we got all sorts of weather checking, especially bad where the weight of it's been sitting all winter. So a couple of winters ago, the air all leaked out of the tire, and I wasn't paying attention to it. Didn't come out here to check on it. So all that weight was pushing on these cracks in it. It got to be some pretty big cracks. So it was a slow leak. And when I went to load it up on the trailer, it just blew out the sidewall. And then I ended up drilling holes in it and zip tying it together to get that patch to hold, and then stuck some patches on the inside. And it actually worked for the rest of the year for me. I only put that tire on just before I took it over here at the end of the year. But that's why you want to try and chalk or at least throw blocks under these things. Tractors too, especially those back tires, they're expensive. These things are expensive. A little bit of preventative stuff like that helps you from having to spend a bunch of money and do a bunch of extra work for yourself. So our battery's disconnected. That's just on this toolbox on the side. We'll pull this out, throw a new battery in. While we're doing that, we're going to get those tires on the other side airing up, and we'll get back with you. Tires are aired up, battery's hooked up. This thing's hydrostatic, so even though it's in neutral right now, when you go to crank the wheel, like right now we're all the way to the left, it'll sit there and spin in a circle even without having forward or reverse engaged. So when you go to start this, you gotta make sure your steering wheel's in neutral too. So you turn it all the way to the left, kind of remember where you're at, all the way to the right, remember where you're at, and then split the difference. So that's neutral. So when we go to start this thing, it shouldn't move. Even when you go to crank this and the engine isn't running, that starter will still run that hydraulic pump. So you can tell when you go to start cranking it if you're going to be in neutral or not. So give this some throttle, pull our choke, and we'll see if a winter of sitting is going to be too much for this thing. It's got a mechanical fuel pump too, so it probably drained all the fuel out. Actually, I didn't even check to see if there was gas in here. Oh, we got gas. It smells flammable. Okay. Clear prop. Hello? So I might throw some starting fluid in there to get this thing primed up a little better. Huh. That's new. Okay, well, one other thing about this is a couple of years ago the muffler rusted off. So I just have a stick of electrical conduit, some EMT sticking in there. So this thing is straight piped and very loud. We stuck this piece of pipe on, that way it's really loud up above my head instead of right behind my head. I always wear ear protection when I'm running this thing in the fields, but I just have to move it, so it should be okay. Okay, we're having issues with that key switch on that green swather. I'll bring you in on it in a second. We're gonna see if this one starts. That way we kind of have an idea if we need to get parts for this while we get parts for that. I can't, as you can see, I can't really move much of this stuff to get out that way. I guess I'd have to pull out the two the H, the two balers, this H. I'd have to somehow move that Super A with no wheels on it. Or I have to cut out the fence and go through my neighbor's. He probably wouldn't care, but I don't really want to fix the fence for this, and that one kind of needs to move anyways. So I gotta remember how to start this. That's the choke. We should be in neutral with everything. That's to engage the head. This is reversed. That's forward. We're locked because my e-brake's on. You have to have the brake on to start this thing. There's throttle. Okay, let's start it. Because this one's locked up. Like, it locks the steering wheel and the throttle, or the forward and backward selector, and the steering wheel locks it. So it shouldn't move. Oh! Choke. Sweet, that was easy. So funny story about this swather. I got this swather the same place that I got. I don't have any of the tractors over here that oh yeah, okay. I lost my train of thought. Okay, so the story about this one. How I first met this guy is because of that tire on the swather. That tire. When I blew that, I was asking on Facebook to see if anybody had tires in that size that I needed. He had this pair of them, so I went out there, got talking to him, and he had this swather sitting there. That one I kind of want to put a new head on there, and he's got a couple of New Holland swathers with this auger style head instead of the Draper belt head like that one does. So I want to buy one of those New Holland swathers. It's junk. The head's in good shape, but the rest of it's junk. So I want to rob the head and put it on that one because I like them a little bit better. Anyways, he had this swather sitting there. Well, I started having issues with that, and it just died where I couldn't get the distributor to fire consistently. The carburetor was leaking like a sieve. And that's when I put on the new carbon distributor like I did. But I needed this to happen because I still had like 140 acres or 120 acres still to cut that year. So I called him back up, bought this thing. When he was going to load it on the trailer, so he let me borrow this trailer. Instead of, regular gooseneck, the maximum it can be is 8.5 foot wide. His dad put on 12-inch extensions on either side. So this thing's like 10 foot wide trailer just about. So that way it fits these swathers a little bit better and your wheels aren't hanging over the side. So he goes to drive it back up these ramps. and it gets hung up, and we're thinking that maybe it's like the wheel's chalked or something like that, or maybe it just can't quite get up because of the angle. So he's sitting there fighting it, and just like it goes up and then just stops, and you just can't get that thing to move up past the trailer a little bit more. So he's wiggling with it, or wiggling it. I'm checking to make sure that, you know, he's getting up the ramps just fine. Everything's centered and straight. All of a sudden, this thing just takes off. So he's up on top of this gooseneck, which is 4 foot off the ground, and it's full throttle to the right tire. So he goes up the ramp, it turns 90 degrees sideways, drops off the side of this 4 foot high trailer and hits a... So when he dropped it off the back of the trailer, it pulled this head off, and it like had it all cocked weird. And luckily he's got a telehandler out there. So we had to pick this head up and get everything slid back into place. So that way, after he drove this thing off the trailer, that I'd still be able to use it. And worked that same day. As soon as I got it home, pulled it off the trailer, cut, I think, 20 acres with it that night. Next day, cut another 40 acres, and it did just fine the whole rest of the year, even though he drove it off the trailer. Anyways, yeah, that's what happened with this. And I think that maybe that same weekend or the next weekend after I was cutting it, the float stuck on the carburetor. So I drained this 30-gallon tank into the engine. When I went to start it, it was the fluid level inside the engine with the oil and gas mixed was about as high as the fan was. So it was coming out the fan seal and just spraying gas and oil all over the engine of this thing. So right away I had to change the oil. But other than a mishap that was just loose hardware that, you know, nobody could really have checked unless you really go through this thing, and that float sticking, that's about the only issues we've had with this thing. Everything else has been operator error, like getting it stuck. These things freaking suck when you get them stuck. So this is our new key switch. It's the same as the old one. So I'm just gonna pull the wires off, put it on there. It's not a good spot that you can really see it with the camera. But on the end here, ST, that's the start. That goes to the starter solenoid that engages the starter. Right here is IGN, that's your ignition. That goes to the coil, or in this case, goes to our HEI distributor to run the distributor. This right here is BAT, that goes straight to the battery. That's your constant hot that powers the switch up. And then right here is ACC, that's the accessory. That's like, I'll throw my lights on there. I think that's the only accessory I got, actually. Maybe the hour meter, I think, goes on the ignition side of it. So the accessory, when you turn it back like that, your accessory works, but it doesn't send power to your ignition. So when you turn it all the way to the left like this, I could turn the light on, but then it wouldn't be sending power to the coil. So this has accessory off, where you can take the key out. That's on, where it has power to the ignition, it will run, and then crank to start. And that's it. So I'm going to throw this in and bring you back. Okay, try that again. Choke, gave us some throttle. Got a little spritz of starting fluid. Now we'll crank it. More starting fluid before we kill the battery.
That does mean that the other battery's still good, though.
It does. Wish this thing had a hand pump. Like a hand primer.
Yeah.
Okay, we've manually flooded the carburetor by dumping a gas can into the carb. Try and get it to fire long enough that mechanical fuel pump should pick up a prime. We also kind of pre-primed that. We'll see what happens. Oh, clear prop. Forgot to say that. Clear prop. Runs just enough to run the gas out of the carb. Yep. Okay, I don't know if you can hear me. We got this thing to crank up. We're just messing with it off camera. I don't know if this head even works anymore. We got,
yep.
Oh, because that belt is loose. So this scraper on this side. So it still needs some work before it cuts. Okay, I'm gonna pull it around over there. We'll fire that one up, but we might need that other battery. Neutral? Really open her up. Holy cow, that idle's slow. This thing needs an electronic or electric fuel pump.
Yeah.
That way it primes faster. Look how good this thing runs. I mean, a little smoky, but
Well,
really
because you got to cut with it and then it won't.
Well, yeah. Like, all in all, this thing runs well. It's just the head that, well, now it runs well. I'm just having issues with the head. Dang, that idled really slow. Okay, so the battery that was in that green one is low enough that I'd rather use the good one for cutting. So this will go in here. We'll get this thing started, pulled out of the way. Then we'll try the other battery that's low in that green one because I want to put the green one right here. Ready?
Yep.
Oh, the seat's all wet now. It hasn't rained all summer, and then it rained as we're getting stuff ready to cut. Like, what are the odds of that? Really pretty good in the grand scheme of things. Okay. Oh, hopefully this starts with the weaker battery. Oh, perfect. See, once you run it, it runs great, or fires up great. Just that side of the head.
I see you finally took your tire chain off for the summer.
Yeah, but I haven't moved the H, so it's on the chain. the chains aren't on it.
That way, if it doesn't move till winter, you know, you're already set up halfway.
Exactly. I like to set up my chains in the summer, well before the first snowfall. So that's where we're going to leave it. My Hesston 6550, I think we got this thing pulled out and ready. There wasn't really anything wrong with it since last year, so it's ready to go now. We'll go fill it up with gas, make sure all the fluids are topped off. We're going to go grease it and load it up on a trailer and take off. But that's where we're going to end this video. We're ready for the year with this thing. There isn't much to it because not much to these old things. So if you like this video and want to follow along with all my hang stuff, hit that subscribe button down below. Hit the thumbs up button if you liked this thing. And throw a comment if you want to see something different or if you just got some suggestions or just input. So right after this, we're going to be moving this thing into town to work on haying. And pretty much the next few videos for, the next couple of months are just going to be me haying because I only got a small window to cut all this hay in before it all dries out too much. So it's just going to be nonstop for me. I'll try and limit it, trying to keep them interesting, but make sure you follow along. Find something you like. Until next time, thanks for watching Tractor Roy.